Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about the film Female from 1933. And this continues my quest to review as much of the filmography of William Wellman as I possibly can. I previously reviewed Tarzan Escapes, which William Wellman says he directed a week on and told many stories about, particularly in The Men Who Made the Movies documentary. But Female, if you're going to talk about any other film that Wellman did a week on or helped develop or whatever he did, I think Female is the one that he wasn't credited with directing that he had the most to do with, as he probably ended up actually directing more of the movie than even the director Michael Curtiz, who was credited with directing this film. It was a different time in Hollywood, and it was during the pre-code when directors were moving on from assignments so quickly that it really didn't bother them to do a week on this or to pick up on that or whichever. And it's very much pre-code film. It has looser morals about sex than you would really see in the years after this film. And this film was actually banned for about 20 years. Well, I wouldn't say banned, but it wasn't released or shown anywhere, so you might as well say it was banned because of a lot of the things it was doing in this film, particularly the lead character Ruth Chatterton's sexual appetite, were considered taboo and against the Hays Code that would come in a year later. So it was not subject to be re-released from 1934 till about the mid-50s, when I think it played on TV and such and got some re-releases. But before then, for 20 years, this film was basically gone, showing how actresses and women at the time could get better roles, and roles that would have them in positions of power and more prominent roles. Really, if you look at the pre-code era and the women's pictures that were going on at the time, women were getting probably much better and more diverse roles, or at least meatier roles. And I think Female's a great example of that, as Ruth Chatterton's playing an automobile tycoon, a role that she has a lot of fun with and is really good at, showing how loose and fun and amazing pre-code would be before it would all be torn down a year later. Allison Drake, played by Ruth Chatterton, who is a automobile tycoon. She has been placed there after her father died and left her in charge, and she runs the company very well, or at least that's what all her employees say. And she has an unquenchable sexual appetite and has younger guys over to her rich, amazing house, which is actually the exterior location shot was the Enos house, which was designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. The inside, which I assume were just sets, was impressive as well, but to my knowledge was not designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. But she brought these guys over. They would swim in her swimming pool. They'd be very naive, fresh out of college. And then if they got too clingy, she would have them transferred to Montreal, which is a great metaphor, frankly. And one day at a party for her company, in which she has all of the kind of local dealership guys over at her house, swimming in her pool, having a great time, she realizes she's sick of the whole thing and gets into normal poor people clothes and goes out into the city and just hangs out to kind of find someone more interesting, goes to a shooting range, or one of those like play shooting ranges where you get a stuffed animal and such, and she meets this one guy played by George Brent. They have a great time, but he won't take her home with him because he doesn't do that with girls he just met. Then they part ways, and then goes to work the next day, only to find out that he is the hot new designer that she had to have in a meeting previously. They realize they know each other, and he realizes who she is, but he keeps turning down her advances as they slowly fall more and more in love with each other. One of the biggest things about Female is that Ruth Chatterton is the head of an automobile company, and that was incredibly ahead of its time. And how ahead of its time is the part that's most shocking, because a woman would not be the head of an automobile company for another 80 years, until 2014, which was a year before I shot this video. So Female was very ahead of its time, and it's probably one of, I think, Ruth Chatterton's best roles. She's definitely having a lot of fun with it. She exudes a certain level of confidence to her role. She seems to understand the kind of mood at the time, and I think towards the end of the pre-code era, these people have been doing this for a couple of years now. They're churning out pictures left and right. Ruth Chatterton had made another hit with William Wellman previously that year with Lily Turner. They were literally churning them out. I mean, they came to work every day to make movies. They don't really do that anymore, but at the time, that's what they did. Female has that kind of looseness to it that makes it more of a fun romp, but I think also kind of shows how they kind of just didn't care at that point. They were a little more liberal, they were a little more looser, and you get all of that in female, and it's kind of an anonymous title. I mean, it's literally just a gender. But Ruth Chatterton, much like the confidence she brought and the looseness her and Wellman brought to Lily Turner, brings that back in female. And this was considered a box office play at the time. You know how there's certain movies when they come out and they have a bunch of stars in them and everyone knows it's going to be a hit, and the actor kind of exudes that in their performance? That is what was going on in this film. I did not know that while I was watching it, but afterwards it just makes so much sense. Her, and at the time her husband George Brent, who would get divorced a year later, exude kind of a confidence similar to what they had in Lily Turner, but almost more. I feel like they're a lot looser in this film. What Ruth Chatterton brings to the role is a certain confidence that you definitely believe she's an amazing boss. You definitely believe that she's strong and confident and all of those things, and also very stylish. I think this is probably the best she's looked of the three movies I've seen her. I'm not saying that in a creepy way, or she had really good outfits in this movie. That she can do this role so well, it's kind of shows how Hollywood was accepting at the time. And even though the standards and practices at the studio, who were just there as kind of advisors, talked about how she had this kind of unquenching sexual appetite in the film, or sexual hunger I think they called it, Warner's just didn't care. They were just there to make a loose, fun movie. I really like Ruth Chatterton. This might be my favorite performance from her. I think she works better the more liberal the film is, because something like Frisco Jenny I didn't really like, or like her performance in particularly, and Lily Turner was a little more liberal, and female is even more liberal than that, and it seems like she's even better the like more understanding, more liberal the film is. Almost like she's more free as a person. She can be a CEO, and since the CEO is given kind of like the freedom of the world, she's able to do that in her performance. As for the directors of this film, that happened quite a bit in the older Hollywood studio system, just because you had so many people coming to work, you had so many directors who were working on various films. It just sort of happened a lot because people would have moved on. Now, the first director was William Dietrich, who would go on to direct The Devil and Daniel Webster, but he became ill, and I've read some places who've said he worked like a week on it or something. I've read others that he was just in pre-production and Wellman did everything. It seems to me that he didn't work on it very long. Of the three directors, he probably worked on it the least, from what I am to understand. William Wellman came in, and who had just had a huge hit with Lily Turner, with Ruth Chatterton and George Brant, knew them both well, and came in and basically directed the whole movie. And then he was done, and he moved on to college coach. But Jack Warner stepped in and watched the movie, and one of her early kind of boy toys in the movie he didn't like, and no one's sure who the actor was who played this. It was either Lyle Talbot or George Blackwood. There's kind of two different theories who it could be, but regardless, Jack Warner didn't like them, and since William Wellman wasn't actually available to reshoot them, they brought in Michael Curtiz. I've read some things that say that Michael Curtiz went on to reshoot like half the movie, but the guy they recast in it, Johnny Mac Brown, isn't really in the movie like that much, but the flow of the film, there's like 30 minutes before the plot really gets going. They were a little more freeform with their plots back then, so I guess it just seems like a little unnecessary that they would just spend all that money on shooting once they've shot just that actor's scenes. Why keep shooting other stuff? There's like this one shot where Ruth Chatterton's at her desk with all these like lawyers and hangers-on and people like that, and they're all there together, and then she knows someone's going to come, her an old friend from the shop she used to work at, and the camera pans over, and when it pans back, like everyone's gone. And that whole scene, there are like certain things that just kind of pop out. That was a very odd scene, and I kind of wonder if they shot it that way to kind of just like get the footage they shot to work, like if there was more reasons they did reshoots. There's one shot I know is Wellman, and I said the same thing when I reviewed Tarzan Escapes. It's a shot towards the end where George Brant and Ruth Chatterton are at a shooting range again, and her mouth is covered while he's shooting, and it kind of reminds me a lot of previous Wellman shots that are like that, more so than what I said in Tarzan Escapes. I definitely think Wellman directed those. I even think Wellman directed everything with George Brant, because that's later on in the film. I kind of feel like since Wellman directed more of the film than anyone, that it's mostly his film, and Curtiz just got the credit. I know him and Curtiz didn't exactly get along, so maybe this didn't help that, or maybe this started that. I don't know. The thing about Wellman at this period is he did a lot of women's pictures, and as he was working on women's pictures, there was a period around Frisco Jenny, I feel like they're getting a little serious, and you could just feel that he wasn't as into them. He didn't feel as inspired. And then around the time of Lily Turner and Midnight Mary, he gets a little more inspired, like he's having more fun with these women's pictures now, and they're being looser and they've kind of a sense of humor about them. And that's going all throughout Female. And that feels like, I don't know Dietry's direction as well. I know Curtiz, it doesn't feel as Curtiz to me, but I definitely feel like that looser feel is because of Wellman. Because you look at Lily Turner, you look at Midnight Mary, which were films he was directing around the time. It just feels like that kind of era of Wellman. And he was directing a lot of films around the time. He actually had a film come out the week before Female with College Coach, and then a film that came out a month before, which was Wild Boys of the Road, and he had many more films that came out that year already. He was having a very productive year. After 33, he wasn't directing as many movies per year, but 33, I think he did something like 5 or 6, if you even count this one. It was ridiculous how many movies he was directing in one year, and all fairly well directed. I like Female. I think Female, in some ways, you can tell it's a studio mangled film, but the flow of it and its kind of own sense of humor is what kind of makes it special. I didn't expect much of it. I don't think you expect much of a film that has 3 directors. You don't find it as focused. Kind of think, because we're kind of just raised on auteur theory now, that, oh, it's like just this mangled studio thing, but it actually works for itself. There are times where I feel like I am looking for, oh, is this half shot by one director, half shot by another, and things like that. The only shots we actually know that are shot by a certain director are Michael Curtiz definitely shot everything with Johnny Mac Brown, and most everything else is most likely shot by William Wellman. Wikipedia credits him with directing 17 scenes, and since this movie's a little over an hour long, that's a good portion of the movie. But I found it really enjoyable, and I really like that a woman's picture gives a woman a role that's not like a dance girl or a prostitute or a gangster's girlfriend having to do this thing to survive, and also that she doesn't kind of wilt and fall over and become like this weak woman who can't handle it, except for one scene. And I actually don't think Wellman directed this scene, where in the middle of a board meeting after she's been rejected by George Brent, she cries and says, "I'm a woman, I can't handle this like you men," and leaves the room. And then the film never addresses it again. And I don't know who directed that scene, but it's really both off-putting, not just because of the clear sexism, but also because it really just doesn't fit in with her character and with the story. It felt very unearned and weak. I think for the most part, this is a very enjoyable pre-code woman's picture, and I actually kind of wish it wasn't so unavailable. It's pretty unavailable, unfortunately, and I wish more people could see it, because I think it not only shows how there were stronger women before, like, I think there's this bizarre view of feminism, like it just didn't start until post-World War II, and this shows how far it was really going. This is a major studio film. This is a box office play, by the way. This isn't like a weird art movie. This is a hit that lots of people saw, lots of people liked, with a major movie star. And I think it shows the mores of the time and shows how progressive the early 30s were, and even Hollywood was at the time. And it shows just a different era, and how, to me, honestly, how amazing that era really could be, and how ahead of its time they really were, and how that's something us as a society could aspire to be, and we're just kind of getting there 80 years later. But also that it's just a fun little romp of a movie. It doesn't take itself too seriously. It's a fun pre-code film, and it kind of shows you that energy and how well tuned all these directors were. If you didn't know it was directed by 3 people, I don't think you could really tell that much. And it shows the professionalism of the studio system, probably more so than a lot of movies do, and also shows how kind of strong a Ruth Chatterton vehicle could possibly be, and how good William Wellman was at these women's pictures at the end of his reign of doing them. It's a really interesting and fine little motion picture, and I was kind of taken aback by how much I liked it, regardless of how Jack Warner mangled it was. So if you have seen Female and you would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments, and subscribe if you would like to. And check out my William Wellman review playlist. If you're a fan of William Wellman, I've reviewed over 50 of his films. Just click on the annotation below. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.